This is Demon Marked, Book 1 of the Venandi Chronicles, an urban paranormal romance series. Written by Sara Snow. Narrated by Selena Salcido and Henry Shader for Hot Ghost Productions. Chapter 7. Georgia. I felt like I was going crazy as I watched Carter leave my apartment. But when I looked around at the mess left behind, I knew that I couldn't pretend that the attack hadn't happened. That thing, whatever it was, had tried to kill me. What had Carter called it? A soul eater? The implications of that were utterly terrifying. I could hardly believe that this was happening to me. But there was also a small part of me that felt like this made sense in some warped sort of way. I'd always thought that I was somehow different from other people. For years, I had convinced myself that I felt that way because I was a foster kid. I felt like I didn't belong because I'd never had a home or a family. But what if there was more to it than that? What if I'd felt that way because I had some weird power inside of me all along and didn't know it? What if I'd felt that way because I was meant to be part of the world of the supernatural that Carter had talked about? He had said I was special, and I couldn't lie to myself. I wanted to know what he meant. How was I special? Who was I? The answers he promised me sounded almost too good to be true. But I reminded myself that there was more to this than that. There was clearly danger involved. And how did I know that I could trust Carter anyway? He might have killed the monster, but that didn't necessarily mean that he was on my side. His arrival was a little too convenient not to be suspicious. I set about cleaning up the apartment, straightening the futon, which had been knocked into the wall, and sweeping up the broken glass from the wine bottle. I didn't have a mop, so I just used a couple of my white towels to wipe up the wine, staining them red. By the time the place was back to normal, I'd decided that I didn't want any part of this. I didn't want to have these strange powers, or be part of whatever craziness that would put me into the path of creatures like that soul eater. More than anything, I just wanted to be normal. In order to pull that off, I knew that I would have to find a way to prevent accidentally using my telekinetic power. I wasn't sure how to pull that off, but I would have to figure it out. When I went to bed that night, I kept on a light. Logically, I knew that it wouldn't do anything to help me if another monster showed up. But it made me feel a little better. Still, I couldn't sleep for a long time. And when I finally drifted off, it was a restless, uneasy sleep plagued by nightmares. Between my jangled nerves and my memory of the battle that had wrecked my apartment, I barely slept that night. With my eyes squeezed shut, I tried to force myself into unconsciousness. But every time I dropped off, the night came back to me in flashes of red and black. I saw the creature dragging a mask of human flesh over its leathery face, revealing the sucker that wanted to inhale my soul. I saw the man who called himself Carter plowing his blade into the soul eater, leaving it to flail on the ground like a dying fish before disappearing in a veil of smoke. Weirdest of all, in the 10 or 15 minutes that I did sleep, I saw Carter standing over the monster, the blade flashing in his hand. He had cut into that thing as easily as if he'd been slicing a birthday cake. in my dream. He handed me the knife and let me caress the hard length of steel. It felt good to hold his weapon. Comforting. Safe. Like a security blanket. Only with a gleaming blade attached to it. I couldn't remember the last time I'd felt like someone stronger than me was there to back me up. Great, I muttered to myself as I threw the blanket off my body and dragged myself across the futon. I barely know this guy, and I'm dreaming about caressing his weapon. What if Carter wasn't there the next time some creature from hell came after me? I could try throwing wine bottles with my newfound power, but that wouldn't be too effective. Suckerface probably would have laughed at my attempt and mocked my choice of cheap red wines. The alarm on my phone went off while I boiled hot water for coffee. That alarm was supposed to wake me from the beauty sleep I so badly needed. But I had beaten it to the punch. No beauty for me. I would have to drag my tired ass into the call center, looking like I'd spent the night on the sidelines of a supernatural battle. Somehow, I knew that excuse wouldn't go over well with my boss. I took my time in the shower, letting the hot water wash off the sulfuric odor of the night. If nothing else, my new apartment had decent water pressure. The sharp, scalding drops made my skin tingle. And suddenly, Carter's dark eyes flashed in my memory again. I could have sworn that those eyes lingered on my face and body a few seconds longer than decency allowed. Enough of that. I didn't have the time or the energy to think about Carter. Sure, he had saved my life, but he wasn't going to pay my rent or cover the whopping hospital bill that was sure to land in my mailbox any day now. I turned off the faucet, stepped out of the shower, and toweled myself off. Wiping the steam off the bathroom mirror, I saw that I didn't nearly look as haggard as I'd expected. Maybe those bizarre healing powers that had helped me walk out of the hospital after a 3-month coma had smoothed out the bangs under my eyes. In spite of my wretched night, I clocked in at the call center with 4 minutes to spare. I wish the rest of the day had gone so well. As I took call after call, mostly from customers who were irate that their cable had gone off during their favorite infomercial, I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. When one of my coworkers knocked on the wall of my cubicle, I just about jumped out of my skin. "Hey," she chirped, holding out a pink box of donuts. "Did I scare you? I thought you might need a little sugar, honey. You look exhausted." The woman with the donuts had a round, cheerful face, framed with feathers of gray hair. She looked cozy and reassuring, like one of those ladies who ladle out casseroles at school cafeterias. With a shaky hand, I reached for a glazed donut. I didn't even wait for her to leave before I gulped down the sweet glob of dough. "Have another." She extended the pink box. "You're so thin. You could use the calories." With the instinct of a girl who had grown up semi-feral in a revolting series of dysfunctional households, I grabbed an apple fritter. Never knowing when food would be yanked away, I had learned never to turn down treats. No eating disorders for this girl. I ate whenever I had the chance. The woman smiled and trundled off to the next cubicle. I sighed and went back to my phone calls. I wouldn't have minded if she stayed for a while, calling me honey and coaxing me to eat more. The morning dragged on forever, and when it was finally time to log off at noon, I leapt out of my seat and scurried to the lunchroom as if something were chasing me. I wish I could say that it was the double dose of sugar that was making me so edgy, but that would have been a lie. Even under the fluorescent office lights, I felt like I was being chased by shadows. I had forgotten to pack a lunch before I left the house, but when I rummaged through the employee refrigerator, I found a green apple and a stick of mozzarella string cheese that I had left last week. Not exactly a feast, but it would keep me from starving. I found a paring knife in the drawer and began to cut the apple into slices. The tremor in my hands made the knife slip, and the sharp blade nicked my finger. Ow! I jammed my finger into my mouth and tasted the metallic tang of blood. I pulled my finger out, expecting to see a gash in the skin. Yes, there was a cut above the first knuckle of my index finger. But it was already closing, even before my saliva had dried. I stared as my skin neatly and smoothly sealed itself shut. Okay, this is just too weird, I said to my knuckle. Let's see what else you can do. I braced my forearm on the sink, closed my eyes, and drove the knife into my skin. I bit my lip when the blade pierced my flesh, trying not to scream. It hurt like hell, so I definitely wasn't immune to pain. But by the time I had taken a shuddering breath and opened my eyes, the wound was almost closed. So, it wasn't just a fluke that I had bounced back from a gunshot wound to the head and a 3-month coma as if nothing had happened. It wasn't just the fact that I was young, or that I had had a history of surviving trauma. I had another superpower. The sink suddenly felt soft and spongy under my hand. I sank down to the floor, my vision blurring. I had dealt with a hell of a lot of shitty surprises in my life, but this one blew them all away. Even the healthiest of humans took time to heal. I didn't have to be in nursing school to know that blood needed a few seconds to clot, and skin tissue took days or weeks or sometimes months to repair itself. So, if I healed this much faster than a human, then was I human at all? Pride tastes pretty bitter when you're forced to swallow it. But I didn't have a choice. There was only one person in my life right now who could help me understand what I was becoming, or what I had always been. I scooped up my pitiful lunch and made my way back to my cubicle, legs quivering. First, I would eat. That would give me enough strength to make it through the afternoon and back to my apartment to find the business card that Carter had left for me.